Hey there everyone and welcome back to the React.js training. Now in this video we are going to talk about the components life cycle, and just onto a sidebar, if you're coming up from iOS development or mobile app development, basically you might have seen that Vue has a lot of life cycle, like a view will appear, view will disappear, and all of such things. Now it has followed almost exactly the same concept in here. So sidebar over, and let's just come back in here. So what is component lifecycle in here? Now, whenever a component is just about to be loaded, you might want to do something. You might want to set some properties, or maybe when the properties are just about to arrive, they haven't arrived yet, they are just about to arrive, you might want to do a certain check, or properties might have just arrived and you want to do certain checks then. So what are the options that are being available to us that we have? Now, component will mount, component did mount. Like for example, component is just about to be mounted and you want to do certain check before it mounts, or something like component did mount when you want to perform some checks, certain checks as soon as the component is mounted. So we're going to look all of these methods with a very basic example in here. And again, as you might have expected, I have already created a project here to save some good amount of time for us. So I created CD desktop, exercise React. I went into that and I created a new folder, mkdir project-4. You can create that graphically as well, no problem. And I run the command create react app, and I named my project as component-life-cycle. Saved us a lot of time. And finally we are here, and it says, hey, now you can go into this and run npm start. So let's just try that out. It's no big deal here. So we are going to say component lifecycle and we're going to say npm start, and there we go. And it's starting the server in here, and there we go. So let's just arrange the few things in here because we are not gonna use much of the real estate of the screen in here. And I think we can hide the terminal as well, no big deal. And I think this is okay. Now let's go and open the things. So on my desktop, it's gonna be in the exercise React project 4 component life cycle. If that was too quick for you, make sure you can rewind the videos. You have got a lot of options to watch me a little bit slow, or maybe watch me again 15 seconds, just like that. So here we are back in our components, and we need to create a certain app in order to understand that how the component lifecycle work, because this is just pure basic skeleton and we don't want to work with that. So let's just call in our content there. Okay, so this is going to be really useful. So what I want to do in here is this part is okay, welcome to React. In fact, I would say something like component life cycle, and I'll save that. And this looks good, not that much. Now it looks good. Okay, and just in here, this paragraph, I want to create a new component for that. I would call this as simply the body, and let's just do that. So what I'll do in here, I'll take a lot of space in here and I'll simply say rcom. That is React component, in case you're wondering why I named it so. Hit the tab key and I'll call this as simply body. And right now what I'll be doing is removing this p tag, command X to cut that, and the division I'll be throwing it back. Save this, and this gets rid of this guy. And what I'll be doing is calling this body component. So there we go, we have got the body. Okay, now the things are looking good, but we are not getting the body because we haven't made it capitalized. And there we go, now things are good. Now what I want to do in the division, actually this guy, this p guy, just before that, what I want to do is I want to add a button, and as soon as I click on the button, there should be a number on the screen which should get updated. And all I'm looking to do is whenever I click on the button, I want a random number to be generated. Okay, sounds like fun. And we're gonna have this. So how we can have this? Now having this is pretty easy. So what we'll be doing is let's just say in here we'll define that component first of all. So let's just get here, and in order to do so we need first of all a button. So let's get a button. Okay, and this button would be saying button, and there we go. So as soon as I save this, there we go, a button, doesn't say anything, and I would be calling this as random number. Save that. There we go, a button, doesn't do anything, and we haven't incorporated any style. We are not worried about the style at this point of the time. Okay, there we go. So far it's good. Now I want to run a method there, and that should be run on the button. I would be saying on click. There we go. And as soon as I hit the on click, I would be saying a new method should be called. So this dot get random number. You can call it anything. I would be calling it as get random number. I'll copy this. Now as soon as I copy this or I save this, this is gonna complain. It's gonna say, hey, you have said this will click a random number, but it's there, the random number is not defined. As soon as I click on this, right now it's not complaining, but it should be complaining as soon as I do that. Okay, so first thing that you do after defining this method there is call a constructor, because we need to bind this. We can bind it with a this using just in here dot bind, but the problem with this kind of approach is whenever we need to call this function, we have to always bind it. So another good approach would be to just call in the constructor, and we can call that using rcon. There we go, we have got a constructor, and just after this dot state, I can simply say this dot get random number equals this dot get random number dot bind and this. Okay, no big deal so far. And as soon as I save this, this got crashed because now things are working. Now it's saying that, hey, you know what? As soon as I define that, where is that? So I have to define that as well. So there we go. This is how we define that. Right now, I'll just do a simple log, and I'll be saying random number called. Okay, and let's close that, save that, and obviously this would be logging some things, so I need to get into the console, and as soon as I click that, we get random number called with a mistake in the random. Okay, that sounds good. Not that good. Okay, now how we can generate a random number. Now I would be just commenting this out so that you can work on it later on, and how we can get that. Now the first thing that you need to get is we need to define some data so that we can update it on the go. And what I would be doing now, that would be a very good approach. Instead of defining just a number or maybe a variable, I define a new component in here and talk a little bit more about the React way. So I would be simply calling this as number. So first of all, let's define that rcom. I could have done that exactly in the pair of curly braces, but I would like to go with the React approach, and I would be simply calling that as number and numbers, because number I guess is a reserved keyword, so I would be calling it as numbers. Okay, that is good so far. And what I'll be doing is I'll be passing on a property from my number. Okay, let's just do that. So I'll go in here, and what I'll be doing is I'll be calling it as numbers. Close that. Now how do we pass on props there? Very simple. You call that as my number and equals, and the pair of curly braces, we simply say this dot state dot, what should I call this as? D or R for just random number. So our name is R in here. Now the problem is in the state we haven't defined this R, so it's gonna yell us at, and it's gonna say, hey, what you are doing, it's not valid. So let's just make it valid and go inside here and call that as simply R, and let's give it a default value of 0. Okay, so quite a lot of things that we have done in here. And this is not displaying anything because we haven't done anything in here, and we need to do a certain things in here. So in the division, I would be simply saying in the pair of curly braces, this dot, and now here is a quick question. What should I type? This dot state or this dot prop? Now this is going to be a quick example for you. Now whenever you are passing, it doesn't mean it's whether it's stored in the state or prop. You don't have to care in this because this is a dumb guy. Only thing that it's going to receive the data is via this method, and this is props. So what you're going to write in here? Props. Very good. And we are going to simply say this dot props dot, and what should I call it? Dot R or dot my number? Yeah, you got that right this time. Dot my number. Okay, so save that, and we are expecting to see something. There we go. And I believe so that if I get a BR tag there, it would be much better. And save that. Yep, that is good. And now as I click on this, nothing happens because things are not working in here. Okay, now let's go in here, and what we want to do. Now, only thing that we have to do is generate, or we have to set the state in here. Okay, so what we have to do first of all is this dot set state. Okay, that is the first thing that you need to do. And whom state you want to actually change. So go and access the data which is already defined in the state. And what you want to do in here, I want to simply generate a random number. So I'll be calling math dot random, and there we go. And is it going to work? Let's just see. I'll save that and I'll hit that. And notice it's not working in here. And why is that? Now let's just try and work out why it's not working. It should be working, and maybe I'm missing something, and I forgot to actually let me just separate that. Okay, now this is looking good. Now get random number should be called up, and we should be getting some random number there. Okay, let's just figure it out. And on click this dot get random number. I think it should be working. Let's just reload that. And maybe we are not passing the data. So this dot props dot my number, this dot state, and oops, we are not updating the data. We are calling it R. That was a silly mistake. Save that, and should be working. Yep, we are getting a lot of big digits. I don't like it. I would be saying that what about if we multiply this random number simply by 10, because I want to move this 7 on the left of the decimal. So I'll save this and call random number. Yep, we are getting now something on this side of decimal. Now we can use another function known as math.floor to just flat out the things, or simply saying round up the things. Save that, refreshes, and we are getting some random numbers. That is pretty cool. So we have quickly created an application in a React way in which we have a lot of components being divided, and we have created this dumb component which will work anytime as soon as it gets something into the props my number. So it's very dumb there. Okay, looks good. Now in the next video we'll talk about what are the components when the data is being passed on, what are those states for which we have actually done so much of the hard work. So I'll catch you up in the next video, and in the next video we'll be totally focusing on the state of the life cycle of the components.